Mr. Jared Mills. Jared, thanks for joining us tonight, man.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
So, all of us have watched you from Midwest Whitetail. Obviously, I got the pleasure to work with you and learn a little bit, even though I was a little hard headed back then. But nonetheless, man, we it was a fun time. But we just want to kind of talk about tonight is where it all started, where it's been and where it's going. Um, but
Awesome.
just to give you a runaround of the screen here, Darren, Tristan, Jacob, Eli, and Alex are all part of the show. We have one guy tonight that's not able to be on. He's a little busy. His name's Dylan, but we we're all based out of North Carolina. Besides Tristan, he's from that awful state of Georgia. No, I'm just kidding. But nonetheless, man, we do. We're and we've launched a show. Was on Hunt Channel last fall. Had pretty successful numbers, and we're kind of exploring more of the YouTube side, and then also we're in talks with another streaming platform that we're looking to branch into. But enough about us. Let's get into Jared Mills. Um, First question I got, you did the Midwest Whitetail internship in '08. Is that right?
2010 would have
10.
been the first year.
Okay.
Winke launched it in 2008. 2010 was the year I graduated college and had reached out to him. And at the time, he didn't really have a formal internship program, and I had reached out just seeing if there's any opportunities. I had some cool opportunities in the sports industry world, uh, but the hunting bug got the best of me, and I decided to at least try to pursue something in that arena. And Winky was pretty much the only one I reached out to at that time. But he said we don't really have anything, but I was going to school down in St. Louis and playing baseball down there at the time. He said, "Why don't you drive up to Iowa and we'll see if we can figure something out." So I sat in his basement with him for a couple hours, and we kind of talked about this potential, temporary internship position. And so that's what I did for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and it turned into a full-time job after that. So it's obviously my career has evolved a lot over the years during that time frame, but the one thing that stayed consistent for me is the production side. From that very first internship in 2010, where at the time when I took the internship, I barely knew how to turn the camera on, let alone know how to edit video. But I spent a lot of time, late at night at my apartment watching tutorials, trying to figure it all out. And the production side, as you probably know, Nick, it's become just as much of a passion for me as the hunting. Really, I mean, to me, it goes hand in hand. Trying to capture the highest quality video, it's a challenge that I certainly compare to bow hunting, and putting them two together is really where my passion's at. So yeah, since 2010 I've been involved in the production side, and my love and passion for that has only grown.
Yeah, so I think that, yeah, like you said, the production side ties so much into it because, you want to do the compelling story, you want the epic footage, and me and Matt Postel have talked about this to most, but I would, and obviously the group has, but I would dub you, and I know you're gonna reject, I know you're gonna not, but I would dub you probably the best self filmer in the outdoor industry. Like,
Yeah.
there's no brain, it's a no brainer. I mean, you know, from the from the quality side of it, the epic footage. I mean, you've had some of the most incredible hunts that I've seen within the last 5 years, and last year I think you had two of them, the 194 and the 170, like less than 20 yards.
I
two
mean,
years ago, yeah.
2 years ago. You know,
Yeah,
honestly, how do you keep your composure
man,
when all that's going
it's
on?
I'll be the first to admit there's a lot of luck involved in things working out, and I have lost a lot of deer over the years, obviously due to my commitment to the camera. But like, that's the biggest thing when you say, Nick, when you say, best self filmer, like, to me, it's not necessarily the self filming aspect of it. It's the discipline aspect. Like, you
right?
have to be disciplined. You have to consider yourself videographer first, hunter second. Like you just have to. And I'm not an advocate for everyone to be in the same position I am. It depends. Like if I was a guy that had 2 weeks of vacation and that's all I had to hunt every year, I'd be a lot less disciplined than I am right now. So everyone's situation is a little bit different there, but that's the biggest component to being successful self filming is you have to be willing to put the camera first. And if the footage isn't there, if the shot's not there, whatever, you got to be okay with it. You got to be able to live with that decision of watching that buck walk away or whatever happens. So I think that's part of it. And Tristan, to answer your question, I think like anything, experience kind of forms that. How keeping your composure. I think it's something that if you put yourself in that position over and over again, each time gets a little bit easier to keep your composure. And the other thing too, like we all get worked up over a big deer, but when you're so focused on running a camera, your settings, your exposure, your focus, your everything, that kind of takes away some of that. It's a distraction almost from what's going on. Like I don't get worked up anymore, and part of that's experience, but I think a lot of it's because I'm so focused on, okay, do I have everything right, focus wise, camera wise, and it kind of helps eliminate some of that buck fever aspect.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, you know, I think that, and again, I know, on the content creation side, I mean, the quality is just it's absurd because it's so good. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I think that I do agree with, you got to commit to if you're self-filming, you have to commit to making sure that you have everything you need before and after the shot, but mainly before the shot. And then, you got to make sure, okay, I have, this in frame. This is good. This is good, and I could see that being in some people's head so much going on that you do forget about the buck fever and the nerves and everything. Um,
Yeah, and the
I
other
don't,
aspect too, the other aspect, sorry to interrupt, but the other aspect too is you got to love it. You got to be doing it for the right reasons because that really shines through in the quality. Like if I was doing it just because I wanted to get a bunch of YouTube views, or I was doing it just because I had to satisfy sponsors, like if that was my why for filming hunts, man, it would be easy to let the quality slip. Like it would you'd burn out really quick. It would become really monotonous. It just wouldn't have the same type of quality effect. And I truly believe that shines through. For me, it's a passion for getting the highest quality video for my own purposes, for my own documentation. It's my own challenge. Like I love going back and reliving every piece of footage that I capture, and I think that's what leads to that quality. It's because I'm doing it for that reason. That's my motivation, as opposed to something short term, or something that's maybe not as deep or meaningful. If that makes sense.
right. Yeah, no, I definitely think that. Um, but see, I think that's everything you just explained is another reason why. Again, this is completely personal. Like, that's another reason I feel like why that makes you the best in that aspect. I mean, obviously, I know whenever you're just running a camera, it's like a freaking wizard running it. I mean, you know, you guys. I mean, obviously, I learned a lot. Obviously, some of the people that you had working to you as interns. I mean, they're still there. So there's something to be said that you definitely, for one, you pass it on, but two, you're not one of those guys that has all this information and withholds it. Like there is some other content creators or producer styles out there that do that. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that that's where for the next generation, because I know that hunter numbers have dropped. That's only going to start affecting the filming world at some given point. But nonetheless, I think that again, I think that's what makes you stand out. The quality is always killer. You do a great job producing it. It's so epic. It's cinematic. Like, and it's just like you feel like you're sitting in that tree with you. And I guarantee it. That's a lot of the goal you go for too,
for
because
sure.
you want the most real life situation or the most real life production of that, where at some point somebody has went through the same thing. But again, that's just for me, and knowing a little bit about production. That's why it stands out so much to me versus anybody else. So when it comes to a one man show,
I was about to say, I don't know if I've had a 190 sitting at the base of my tree though. That's
See,
that's nuts. And the
yeah,
hole
that
you thread
helps.
it through. I watched it actually last night, and the hole you threaded through. That I mean,
Yeah.
that is just I don't know
When
what
when
kind of
when
hyper
I say
focus you
luck
get in.
involved, though, that's like the perfect example. Like that buck. I screamed at him, and he could have
Yep.
easily he just happened to finally stop. There was no distracting, whatever. So there's a lot of luck that when it comes to pulling a hunt like that off. Um, but yeah, I mean, when someone says they feel that's probably the best comment I can get is when someone says they felt like they were in the tree with me. They were worked up, nervous, as if they were part of the hunt. I feel like I did my job as a producer, as a videographer, because I also enjoy helping people and especially newer hunters learn from those experiences. And I think the more I can replicate that experience, as in put them in the tree with me, high quality, not no distracting poor quality video, no distracting poor quality audio. If there's no distractions, they can immerse themselves in the hunt. They're going to learn way more than lower quality video. So that's the other reason I try to capture the highest quality to replicate that experience. I want people to feel like they're in the tree with me, and um, you know, there's a lot that has to happen for that, obviously. But it's cool when people are able to relate to that.
right? Yeah, I think that to kind of transition and kind of rewind a little bit. At probably the one thing that you and I have in common, two things: we both film and we did an internship. But past that, hunting wise, we're not even. You're major league. I'm still in the doggone coach pitch.
Yeah,
But
look.
so I think for me, looking back on that Midwest Whitetail internship, because for me that was it was a great time. I learned a lot, but it was almost a life changing deal because it really it changed how I felt about production and filming. So for you, going into that internship, what was that like? Obviously the first year, but also the couple years after, kind of once you got established in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it was, similar to you in that it just felt like you're drinking from a fire hose. Like you're trying to learn these skills to do this job that you have no idea about, from filming to producing, and you're jumping in. Like I think I started, I don't know, June or July, but you're trying to prep yourself, because I was Winky's cameraman that fall. So like this guy, who's been in the industry forever, you watched him. Now it's on your shoulders to produce that show and to capture the footage. So like, initially I could, there's some pressure there. But like anything that you encounter, whether it's job related, sports related, whatever, you want to succeed. You want to, put yourself in the best position. So it was just your typical, like, okay, I'm just going to grind to get it done. I had my day to day activities, but I'm going to stay up as late as I have to at my apartment. Watch as many tutorials if I need to do just to get myself, comfortable and confident in doing that. It was obviously a way different internship program then than it is or what was for you, at that point, Nick. But um, there's and Midwest Whitetail is still relatively new too. So from Bill's standpoint, he didn't have it all figured out. It was only 2 years into the business, so yeah, just a really steep learning curve early on. And that once you got kind of past the production side, the technical side, it was trying to learn the industry itself. How does this work? The semi live digital online hunting realm was still very very new. It wasn't. It's not like it is today, where everyone has a YouTube show. It's not much of a barrier to entry. back then it was like, what is this? Is it going to work? What do we have to do to make it work? So there's just a lot of learning up front. And then, being a recent college grad, you're dealing with the same thing that everyone in that position does. Like, is this what I want to do long term? Is this career for me? Like, it's all that type of stuff. You're young, you're still trying to figure it all out. So I would say my experience wasn't that much different than anybody else in that position. But those are some of the things that I recall. It definitely wasn't easy, but I certainly learned a lot about myself, about the industry, obviously about production, all that type of stuff. So, uh, certainly looking back, it's cool to see how it's come all full circle with that experience and how I've been able to, in a roundabout way, build a career around those first experiences. Um, so it's certainly something I'll never forget as far as looking back at where it started.
Right. And I think that, to kind of dub you on something there, I think there I learned way more about production. I feel like camera wise, I got a little bit better and, kind of explored newer things and tried new shots that I'd never tried before. Just due to the fact that, you know, that internship took place in the mecca of the whitetail, world in Iowa.
Right.
Still, still one of my favorite places to ride around bean fields and velvet time. That is, I've told
Oh
these
yeah.
guys like you got to do it once. It's insane. But I
Yeah.
think that the number one takeaway was production. I mean, you know, I think that my internship here was a little bit different um, than some, just because of the circumstances that particular year. But nonetheless, it was an awesome time. I mean, intern with three in office with three great guys. I know Josh was working with you that year. Um, I mean, I couldn't have asked for more from a teaching side and a workplace side, but I know 100% I could ask for more from my personal self and how I should have handled things. There was still a lot of things that I had to learn um, about myself going into that internship, and didn't learn them till probably the following year, to be honest. But
Yeah.
that it did prep me for the freelance world, and
Yeah.
loved that life for a little bit, but realized it wasn't for me, and so now figured why not use the little bit I know and us do our own thing. So I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of the biggest thing from that. Um, so what from that era, not that early on, but just the era of Midwest whitetail. There's a couple hunts that stand out. The one for me personally, I can't remember who the cameraman was, but you killed a deer on the ground at like point blank, just insane. So my question for that is, what went into that? And I'm sure you explained it in the episode, but what went into that setup to
Yeah.
make you think that you had to go on the ground attack to kill that deer?
Yeah, so that would have been 2020, I believe. And Connor Clark was my cameraman that year, one of our interns. And man, we grinded it out all year after that deer. That was what made that so much more rewarding, as you chase them all year and kill them on the, I don't know, it was the last week of the season, maybe 5 days left or something like that. But what was crazy is that deer, he lived in a spot that was super tough to hunt, a big CRP field. It was just hard to get close to him. There just wasn't many trees you could hunt out of. And he actually disappeared. Not fully, I'd get occasional pictures, but I never saw that deer from, I think, November 1st until January 1st. So almost 2 full months without an encounter with that buck, with, my primary target for that season. So it was certainly a grind. We had a couple of encounters in October and one November 1st, I think, and then went 2 months without an encounter. And 2 nights prior to me killing him, I was, again, we had to be creative in how to get to this deer because you couldn't just set up in a tree stand, like a normal hunt. And so there's this old homemade blind elevated that overlooked some standing corn and then all the CRP. And the plan, which looking back, kind of a crazy plan, but it also could have worked. But the plan was for me to take my ghillie suit and we were going to climb up in that elevated stand and watch. And if we spot him, I was going to climb down and make a move on him while the cameraman stayed up in the elevated blind. And so that's what happened. He came out following a bunch of does, spitting snow. And so I get down, assuming that they're going to make their way towards, the main destination food source. And so I'm out there, like, kind of weaving between corn rows, trying to find them, trying to find any deer. And I finally get up to a little high point, and I look back, and he's walking 25 yards past that elevated blind that my cameraman's sitting in. I mean, never in a million years, I've never seen him walk past that blind. Never would I have thought he would walk past that. I mean, he bypassed all the food and kept on walking. So at this point, there was only a few days left in the season, and that was this deer had kicked our tail in all season. That was almost the time I was like, I just need to hang up my bow on this dude that has us beat. But there was one thing that stood out from that hunt. We watched him. A bunch of trees that got cleared on that property earlier in the year, and they're all piled up into a brush pile. And when I was later that night kind of looking through the footage, I watched him walk past that giant brush pile. And so 2 nights later, we had basically the opposite wind, where I thought if we could get in there, both of us put on ghillie suits, blend ourselves into that brush pile. If he does the same thing, we might have a chance. And fortunately, that time of year they're a little more patternable as far as the trails they take and what they do, just because it's more of a bed to feed pattern. But anyhow, we got in early. We had it was a tougher winter year, and we kept getting ice and snow, and so like it was. I don't know how much you guys have with experience with that cold snow, ice, but like the layers of it was super crunchy. It sounded like, we sound like a freight train coming in that afternoon for that hunt. As every step you broke through the ice. So it was just a brutal walk in, had to walk all the way around through a creek. It was about a half-hour drive to the property, and I thought over and over again, I was trying to decide between 3 different entry routes. And looking back now, he ended up bedding somewhere different that afternoon. If I would have taken the other 2, would have chosen any of the other routes, I would have bumped him out of his bed. But the one route I ended up choosing happened to work, where we avoided where he was bedded. But we got set up on that brush pile, and that was one of the coolest just wildlife outdoor experiences I've ever had, because it blending in with the ghillie suit, man, it's like nothing knows you're there. We had pheasants flying up out of our lap, like birds landing, like it was just crazy. You just felt like nothing knew you were there, and it was those started working by, and there's a couple times where some mature does were looking our way, never really busted. We spotted him. He, instead of following the dose, he was bedded completely by himself. He came in by himself that night, and he was coming right down towards us. So we're watching, getting ready. He's going to make his way right in front of us, and a pheasant gets up out of our brush pile, and it was dead silent. And so every noise, the deer already pressured from gun season, stuff like that. But that pheasant flew up, and he whipped his head right at us, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is the reason we're going to get beat tonight, is a dang pheasant flying up, But fortunately, he kind of shook it off and kept on coming, and he kind of turned the corner at 24 yards. And if you watch the hunt, like, sitting on a brush pile all night is not comfortable, for one, but 2, it's super awkward, because I was kind of sitting back and like pretty much lean back. And I earlier in the night I tried, and plus ghillie suits are not comfortable either. But I tried drawing early on, cold weather, and man, I struggled to get my bow back on that first draw just because I like the way I was sitting. I lost all my core power. It was just basically all arms. And so I remembered that when he was coming, I was like, "You better just rip this thing. Like you got to. There can't be any hesitation." And so like when he and I can't draw early because as soon as I move, he's gonna lock up. I knew I had about 3-4 seconds to be on him and shoot because I wasn't gonna stop him. I needed to be at full draw, ready to shoot because he was gonna stop as soon as I moved. And so when he hit my one shooting lane there, I ripped it back, and he stopped and looked, and by that time it was too late. The arrow was on its way, and just watching him run off and fall 75 yards away, it was surreal, but it was just a cool ending to what was basically a 2-year chase on that deer, and to have killed him that way, just trying to be creative, and not just do stuff for fun. Like I didn't do it because I thought it'd be fun to kill a deer with a ghillie suit on a brush pile. Like I did it out of necessity, just last gasp at just like how do I get close to this deer, get within bow range, of this deer. So pretty rewarding experience, and yeah, that's a fun one to relive for sure.
I feel like that's definitely
Absolutely.
what keeps us coming back. These deer, they're such an unpredictable animal, and people nowadays get caught up with, oh, I need this better bow, I need this better suit, I need this better boots, and all this kind of stuff like that. But man, that's what keeps us coming back right there. Those deer, unpredictable, the story that gets built up with these deer, and then when it all happens in the blink of an eye, it's all over
Yeah.
for that one deer, and you're like, well, what am I going to do now?
I know it. It's like it is what keeps you coming back, and that's why I hope we never get to the point where it's too easy, because it's
100%.
those times you get beat that you learn the most and that are the most rewarding when it happens. And yeah, I think a lot about that in the industry. Just like technology's changing, everything's changing, and I really want people to always appreciate the chase and the challenge of it, because we also talk about hunter recruitment a lot, and I look back at the way I cut my teeth on hunting, especially bow hunting. It's like I failed 1,000 times more than I succeeded, but that's why I think I appreciate it so much. If I was super successful all the time, I honestly don't think I would even be doing this. I wouldn't be hunting. It's not the same. So, yeah, those are the ones. Like it's cool to have it end like that, but the part I appreciate the most was that it was so hard. For 2 years, just trying to do everything I can to get within bow range of that deer.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's it's it's surreal. That I think that's one of the best words to give it. I mean, I'll be straightforward with you. I've not had a harvest like that. I had a year before my internship in 2016. I missed I used to have an Illinois farm. Missed a 160-inch deer at 22 yards. Next night, shot him. Looked like I'm absolutely boiler roomed him. Um, Hit him probably a little low looking back, and next day went in there with a tracking dog and had good blood for 150 yards. Whenever it started kind of spotting up, I backed out the night before. Dog went in there, went like another 50 yards, sat down, and I'm like, I looked at the guy, I said, "Look, man, I'm trying to be as nice as possible, but like, what's going on with the dog? Like, just take me to the deer." He's like, "Well, he's trained for this and that, whatever." I can't remember word for word, but he's like, he said, "Go up to that oak ridge." He said, "He should be right there." I said, "Okay." So I had my bow in hand, obviously to try to get off another shot if he's still alive. Man, this sun gun was just bulldogging a doe down the doggone creek bottom. And and I'm looking at him, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like the biggest deer I've ever laid eyes on, ever had on a trail camera, had it on film. And I'm like, why? Like,
Crazy.
and I think for me, it's like, why me? But like looking back, it's made me so much better. And like, I learned like more because see, that was the first time I'd ever been out of state. And like here in North Carolina, and I believe in Georgia, we can bait. And that can be a whole argumentative topic for another time. But
About it. If you're
Yeah.
not, the neighbor definitely is.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
That's how it is down here, for
Yeah.
but
sure.
I think that it taught me so much about, you know, I do, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, but what I have learned from watching hunting and people like you, like Bill, Waddell, and them, and people that I looked up to and like really honed in on. I think for me, it showed like, okay, not only they, you guys know what you talk about. Don't get me wrong, but it's how to apply that in a situation. And obviously, not every situation's covered out there because things can happen, like Tristan said, in a blink of an eye. But
Yeah.
I think that that's something that you do very well with. I feel like the hunting public guys do well with teaching you about deer behavior. I think that Seek one, and there's a couple others out there. Don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, that's a huge thing for me, and I know that some other viewers, they're learning. Just like you took what seemed like a last resort because I mean it pretty much was. I mean you had to pull some curveball out to get to him, and you just made it
Yeah.
happen. I think that that's where as hunters, you got you can't be afraid to try new stuff and not just stick to the old script all the time.
Right. And I certainly am a believer and would challenge people to not only focus on what they can learn from other people. There's a lot of resources out there, and everyone's trying to be a resource for people. But um, I think the absolute best way to learn is your own experiences, and the best teacher you have is the deer you're hunting. Like if you hone in on that and not worry so much about, well, I was watching this guy and he did this, maybe I can try that. Yeah, there's elements you can take from that for sure. But if you hone in on and really think through the deer you're hunting, the property that you're on, how they use it, what you've seen in the past, what you like, that is the best way to learn and to succeed. Failure is the greatest teacher. So I just caution guys in a world we live in with this an overabundance of information, and you can watch pretty much every video that you could possibly dream of just at the snap of a finger. I caution people not to get too wrapped up in that, and just take bits and pieces of it and not overlook your greatest teacher is right in front of you. It's your own hunting situation. Not no one else is in your shoes. These people you're watching on TV aren't hunting your property, aren't hunting your deer. So um, I think people need to make sure they don't lose sight of that as far as learning and becoming a better hunter.
Right.
Absolutely. I had a instance about 2 years ago. I killed my biggest deer to date, and it was self filmed. Um,
Sweet.
yeah, deer come in right underneath the stand, turned around and looked at me. It was giving me the old head bob, and I'm sitting here
Yeah.
behind the tree in my saddle. It was a first year saddle hunting, and I'm sitting here behind the tree holding the camera like this, and comes out. I filmed the deer, the shot, everything was perfect. Then afterwards, we start looking at footage. We're like, I have footage of the deer, but I don't have footage of anything else. Because
Yeah.
my GoPro that was filming me, it turned off, the battery died. I didn't realize it, and there's a lot of mistakes that happened, and the video didn't turn out like I wanted it to, but it was a good learning experience.
For
And
sure.
it's like, in the future when that happens, especially self filming, it's like I need to make sure that A, B, and C is in check before that situation even happens.
Right. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Is just learn from it.
Yeah.
It's failure's all part of it. Failure's a good thing, if you look at it the right way and you make changes.
Absolutely. And that's what I got one of these guys down here in Georgia, and he's got a really good deer on camera down here, and he keeps telling me, man, I got him patterned down to this date. Actually, let me rewind a little bit. He shot this deer in the neck last year at like I think it was 18 yards.
Dang.
Shot it in the neck. Deer runs off. They track it for I think 700-800 yards. Could never find it with the dogs. So fast forward this year, he shows back up on camera with the hole in his neck, and it goes to show you how tough these deer actually are. These animals,
Yeah.
and he got it on camera this year, and now he's going, man, I got him patterned down to a T. Got him. I'm gonna kill him on opening day, and I'm like, dude, did he read the script?
Yeah,
Did you show him? Did you tell him that?
Exactly.
But
Does he look the same, or did he change with the injury?
he actually changed. So on his G2 is actually the base of it is a lot lower than this side. Like this side is kind of palmated, and this side is split right very, very close to the base. And I think it's like a 12 or 13 inch G2. I mean, it's pretty nuts. He's a stud this year. He's gained a lot of mass and then a bunch of trash around his bases. But man, he's a great deer. I hope he gets him, honestly, but he keeps hitting me with that, and I'm like, man, well, you better tell him. Better let him know.
Shoot him over an email. Yeah, I think one of the coolest stories that we have brewing for this year, and Jacob, I'm gonna let you explain it. Of old Mr. Dime that got lucky last year. So Jacob, kind of just tell I want because Jared obviously just gave us a crazy story of that 2-year chase. I mean, I guess this is year 2 of the chase of that deer to an extent. Because he caught a mulligan last year.
Yeah. I have it's a deer I call turkey foot because it was a typical 9-pointer, but he had like a 3 that literally come off that looked just like a foot. And Nick and Dylan come down and hunted with me last year, and I told him, I was like, look, I have one deer that I do not want shot. Like, I need him to make it. It's like he's going to be a good deer. And I told Nick, I sent Nick to where I'd been seeing him. I told him, I was like, look, there's a big 7-pointer in there. You can kill him. Well, 10 minutes goes by, Nick texts like, hey, the big 7 just come through. I couldn't get a shot at him. He sends me the video. I was like, thank God you did not get a shot at that deer. I said, that is the wrong deer. I was like, dude, if you'd have shot that deer, I would have been so mad. Anyway,
that's awesome.
Anyway, he ends up shooting the 7-pointer like he was supposed to the next day. But long story short, that 9-pointer just showed back up yesterday, and I bet he probably put on almost 40 inches from one season. I mean,
he looks absolutely incredible. Like it is like it's a beautiful deer.
But it sucked. He lost the whole turkey foot thing. He don't have that no more. He's just a typical 10-pointer now. But anyway,
how old do you think? Because obviously you guys are in different part of the country than me. But like, when a deer makes that big a jump, is it like a 3 to 4 year old?
I really think that he was 3.5 to 4.5.
Yeah.
This year I think he's a 4.5-year-old. And I told my dad, because me and my dad hunt the farm. And I told him, I was like, dude, if he could make it one more year, like, I really don't know what the deer could turn into. Because to make that big of a jump, I mean, he might not go anywhere after that, but
yeah,
I mean,
it's hard to say.
Yeah.
What is it? Area with a lot of pressure?
So far, so this is only our second full season on the farm, and I don't think so. I mean, we kind of got lucky, and we got a really, really big tract of land. It's just continuous. Like, there's no breaks in it, no nothing. So as far as I can tell, no, I don't think so. Yeah. Unless there's somebody hunting on the back side of it, but they'd have to come in off a completely different way. And to where I'm getting this deer on camera, he's literally in the dead center. The closest road to him is probably like 3 miles. So I don't think so, but then again, you never know, I guess.
Jacob's definitely the guy of the group that we get a little angry at every now and then. About at least once a week, he's sending a stud in the camera. Got a new one, boys. Good, buddy.
Good.
Appreciate you sending that.
Yeah, every group has one of those guys. For sure.
I think that, and the cool thing about last year, or the crazy thing about last year's hunt, he come out that 9 come out right at first light. I mean, just enough to see through the scope, just enough for the camera to pick up. And last year, those two deer, their frames were very similar. And so he come out, I'm trying to look at him through the camera, and I'm like, because I think I had a 200 to 600 Sony lens on it. So, not a great low f-stop lens on that. So I'm like trying to make it out. I'm like, I think that's him. Well, man, he stepped out and like stood there for 5 or 6 seconds. I'm, plenty of time to get a rifle up and put a good shot on him. And I was like, you know what? I don't want him to just step out and kill him. I want some footage of him, to go along with it. So he's just standing there, and I'm like, all right, whatever. He's in focus. I'm watching, texting Jacob. I'm like, dude, he just stepped out. I'm about to rock his world. Like, no question asked. And he starts strolling across the food plot, and I got on the gun. He was stopped. I looked at the camera. He stepped out of frame. I'm like, okay. Same thing. Got back on him. Looked at the camera. Stepped out of frame. I'm like, okay, whatever. So to our right was another little food plot strip inside. I was like, all right, you know what? He's gonna come right here. Jacob said he's every time he comes from this side, comes to this other side, whatever. Didn't make it there. I texted Jacob. And I'm like, dude, 7-pointer just rolled through, like so on and so forth. And I mean, it is immediately text back, big capital letters, no, 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 no. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like that's him? He's like, no, that's the 9 that I told you not to shoot. And I'm like,
Oh God. I remember it like yesterday because I literally he was like big 7 went through. I was like, oh dude, he'll come back, and I was like, send me the video. Send me the video. I was like, oh my goodness, like my heart sank. I was like, thank goodness he did not stop.
Did you shoot him? Please tell me.
It was meant to be.
Oh yeah.
Now you got to kill him.
And
That
after
7-pointer you killed though the next day was a good 7-pointer though.
oh, dude, he's an old bully buck. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
he come in chasing a doe, and like it was like 3:45. I mean, in the afternoon, I'd been in the stand for 30 minutes, and and this is pretty crazy, and it goes to show you how much deer travel during the rut. And like, so Dylan was hunting probably a mile down the road. Actually, we looked it up; it was like 1.2 miles from where I was hunting, and seen this deer that morning. That he was a busted up 8-pointer, had half of his main beam broke, chasing a doe. 3:15. I just got the camera set up. Here he comes hauling right behind the same doe, or well, to believe the same doe, but over 1.2 miles in 6 hours.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
crazy.
and we're
and
like,
then made it back over to where the other boy was hunting that afternoon, right at dark.
just
That's so crazy.
absolutely hammering it. And so, he come rolling through, and I text Jacob. I'm like, dude, that busted up 8 just ran through here like a bat out of Hades, like hauling the mail. And he's like, well, hot doe there, never know what's going to happen. So they go way off. I mean, I can hear them still running through the pines. And then, like I said, about 3:45, 4:15, somewhere like that, doe come up to the right, come out the bottom to the right. I glanced over and I seen another deer behind her, but I couldn't make it out because he was behind some limbs. Threw the binoculars up. I'm still looking, and he finally did the little, dropped his head. I said, "Oh, that's him! Like, no brainer, that's him." And got the cameras rolling, had the GoPro, the ace, all that good stuff, and shot him 65, 70 yards. And man, it was really cool though. He made good footage. He, like I said, he was an old bully buck, and that's I tell Jacob every year, I'm like, what deer do you have that needs to just die? Like what deer, 6-pointer, big 4-pointer, like I'll just come, fill a
Put
tag
me
on
in,
them.
coach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sign me up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So and I think that and to get back to the point of all that before we got sidetracked, or, whatever. I think that I'm hoping Jacob does harvest that deer this year, just for the sole fact of, I mean, don't get me wrong, he has thousands of pictures of that deer, but also the footage and the story behind it. Some comical relief, some hey, that guy's an idiot. He should have shot him as soon as he stepped out. Stuff like that. But nonetheless, I think if Jacob's fortunate and able to harvest that deer and outsmart him, it'll make for a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
But
You gonna try to get on him early, Jacob?
I'm gonna try if he like Tristan said earlier. I mean, as of right now, he's kind of got a little pattern this past week, and I'm gonna try to kill him opening day if he sticks to it. But
Did you tell
When
him?
do you guys open up?
we are
September 7th.
September 7th.
Okay.
Better shoot him a
told him.
text. Better shoot
I
him a
did.
text. Let him know.
I left a note on the tree this afternoon when I went down there.
Be here.
He'd
this
be
time.
here September
20
7th,
yards broadside.
4:30.
Stand here for a little bit. Let me get drawn on you.
yeah, at 7:14, I need you to stroll on by.
Yeah, he was in there.
Don't bother looking up.
So
And I
far,
think-
he's been in there. He was in there yesterday afternoon at 6, this morning at 9, back this afternoon. So I really think he beds really close because last year. So I didn't find the spot till late last year, and well, I say late. It was about November. I found the spot, and he was the first deer that popped up when I put the camera up, and it was on nothing. It was literally a trail. So it goes down like a big mountain, and then it flattens out to a bottom to like a thicket with a big old creek in it. And on the other side of the creek, it's like really, really thick, and it's just trails everywhere. And I just found a trail that I'm going to bed. Sorry. But I found a trail that came across a creek, threw the camera up on it, and that was the first deer that came through there like an hour after I had left. So I think he lives very, very, very close, and it's perfect because he's on the other side of the creek, and you got to kind of come down this side, so you're not even close to him whatsoever.
Cool.
So,
That's
So
awesome.
Jared, I gotta ask you. I've been chomping at the bit over here a little bit. I gotta ask you about your mulch scrapes. What kind of scent you using? Where you setting them, and how to go about setting them up to where you can get some of the mature deer on camera.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of mock scrapes. Obviously you guys can bait during the season. I think Iowa you can bait up until the season, or maybe you can continue to do it if you don't hunt here. I'm not 100% sure, but my personal experience is mock scrapes are way more effective, especially this time of year. Getting inventory on bucks than dumping out a pile of corn. A lot of guys will throw out a pile of corn or something to take inventory right now. I I have way better luck. I'll get a ton of does and small bucks and raccoons on corn, but with mature bucks, the ones that I'm trying to learn about, and that's the other thing. I'm not just trying to get pictures of the deer. I'm trying to learn, what they're doing, what direction they're coming from. I want as natural of a pattern as possible, not one that is aided by a corn pile I put out that, won't be there during the hunting season. I want to know, as much as I can about that deer's natural movement pattern. So, mock scrapes to me this time of year, especially right now, I've put out, man, I bet I put out 25, 30 mock scrapes just this week. And they're tearing them up. We're right before velvet shed here in Iowa. And this is the time where they really start ramping that up from now all the way through velvet shed. I get, you pull up my phone right now and you can just scroll down the cameras on mock scrape, and they're just, as soon as I put them up, with the ones I put up today, I guarantee there's bucks on them right now. Like they're that powerful this time of year. So how I do it, everyone has a little bit different method, but my favorite way to do it, one, the location has to be good. You can't just throw one up anywhere. But I have found that if I'm able to create a mock scrape early, like this time of year, or maybe earlier in the month of August, I have a better chance of that being a higher use scrape. And more like community type scrape than if I wait and let the deer create them first, or just create the natural ones. If I can create the first good scrape in an area, that tends to be the highest used one throughout the season, in my experience. So I like to create them early. My favorite way to do it is, I think that the key is a vertical hanging branch, vine, rope, something that has a vertical aspect to it. A lot of guys will just find kind of overhanging parallel limb, and just use that. And of course, the deer will sometimes chew a little vertical section off. But if you can make a very obvious, if you can find a parallel limb, and hang. My favorite is an oak branch, especially a more wiry one like a pin oak. That's my favorite one. I've had good luck with ropes. I've had good luck with cedar branches, but my number one as far as like the most consistent deer activity is an oak branch. So even if I don't have an oak limb sticking out, I'll go find an oak branch somewhere, take my pruners, and I'll cut the length that I need, and I'll use the heavy duty zip tie or two of them, and I connect that vertical branch to the existing branch. That tends to be just a magnet for the bucks to come visit. The other kind of important thing too is you want to do everything you can to make that the spot. So I will, like, let's say I'm on a field edge and there's multiple trees hanging out over the field. I'll go snip off all the other potential licking branches. I want them coming to this one, whether that's where my bow shot is, that's where my camera is, whatever it is. I want them using that one. I don't want them to visit the first two or three before and then, continue on their mission wherever they're going. I want to make sure they hit that scrape. So vertical branch, a more wiry oak branch, and then the scent. So it's kind of funny you asked. I'm actually getting ready. I'm making the final touches on launching my own mock scrape scent line. Um, and it's just because I've been, as I've been branching on my own, I've been trying to find ways to like dive more into certain product areas. And because I, have been such a proponent for mock scrapes and have tried so many different scents, I started testing my own last year and they did phenomenal. And so I used them all last year and have been using them all, so far this year. So I'm just kind of on the business side, making final touches before I'm ready to ship that out. But my favorite is a pre-orbital gland lure, which is the forehead gland on a buck, and it usually just take a dropper and put a couple drops on that vertical branch, and that's usually all it takes. I'll occasionally go and freshen it up throughout the season because it is really cool to see how powerful that freshly visited kind of scenario that you create, how it agitates some of the local dominant bucks. It's just cool to see the attitude change when they know a different buck has been there recently. So right now, this time of year, obviously we're nowhere close to the rut. So I'm not using any type of estrus. I'm not using any type of dominant buck or anything that's more rut focused. I'm using just a more of a curiosity and calming scent, like a deer herd scent, that I'll spray on the ground, and then the pre-orbital gland lure goes on the branch. And I'm just using 2 scents this time of year, and getting really really good results with that. But as we get closer, I'll start introducing some more dominant buck lure, and then obviously add some estrus once we get to mid to late October. I'll start introducing some of that. So I like to mix it up a little bit, but I would say the staple is that pre-orbital. I also have a product coming out that worked really well last year. Basically, they're little polymer chunks, so come in a little canister, but they're polymer soaked in buck and doe urine with some estrus and stuff in there, and you just drop the little polymers on the ground in a scrape, and those polymers take a while to break down, so that scent really stays in there, and that it stays active for a long time. And had some really really cool trail cam videos and pictures and stuff last year of like where I would go and drop those in the scrape, and the hours following, just watching some of the deer's reactions, especially from bucks, was pretty cool. So I love mock scrapes. I think they're super effective. Do I think you can just go find one and hunt over it and be successful? Not necessarily, but from an inventory standpoint and knowing what deer are around, when they're around, which directions they're coming from and going to, I think mock scrapes are as good as it gets.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I think that it honestly changed my opinion of mock scrapes. I'm
They
not gonna
work.
lie.
They work.
You
Yeah.
know, but also I think that. Oh yeah, by the way, when you drop those products, just send me a link. Everybody in the group will buy some.
Absolutely.
100%.
Because the past couple of years, I've started using mock scrapes pretty hard around a couple of my farms, and there was one on that same farm where Nick shot his deer last year. Every single buck I had on camera, it came to it at least one time. I put it out literally about this time of the year, and
Yep.
throughout the season, every single deer I had on camera came to that mock scrape at least once to check it out.
Yeah, I think they're so powerful. I think you just have to just understand how deer use them. Branch height is a really important thing. You hang it too high, or like this time of year, like I said, I like getting them out this time of year, but this is the time of year where all the foliage is on the trees, and those branches are weighed down with the weight of the leaves and the foliage. So as the leaves start to fall off, those branches raise up. And if you hang it at the perfect height now, in October when the leaves are off, it's going to be too high. And if that branch gets too high, that scrape's going to shut off so quick. So this time of year, I like to shoot for about waist level. It depends on the tree and what type of tree it is and the how much weight will lift off. But a general rule of thumb, I like to hang it close to waist level now, so that after foliage comes off, it ends up about chest level, which is about the right height throughout the fall. So that's another thing to keep in mind too. Is if you get them out early, don't hang them too high because it's going to change in height.
I was about to say, I noticed that last year with a buck I had on camera. He was over a scrape, and it was just a natural scrape. They were kind of using it as a community. And as the year went on, I had him like right there at the beginning of October. And as the year went on, that limb did that right there, and I didn't even notice until you just said that.
Yeah,
And that scrape disappeared. By the end of October, it was gone.
yeah,
They weren't
it
hitting.
can raise up, or sometimes they chew on it so much and that vertical branch hangs or falls off, and then that scrape goes cold. So I like to use the thick zip ties, and a lot of times I'll use two of them to make sure that they're not, because they get pretty aggressive. Obviously,
Oh, yeah.
especially as rolling until October, it's crazy what they'll do. They stand up and throw their rack through it and all that. So if you can get that secure on there so that scrape stays hot and stays active throughout the season, especially the ones that are hard to get to. I hate having to go back and put a new limb on that thing. So sometimes I'll even triple zip tie it.
How much, like, how often are you ever, or at all, are you refreshing them with new scent?
Only if I'm there. So if I have to go in and pull an SD card or change batteries, or if I'm walking by it on my way into hunt, um, I think it's worth refreshing. It doesn't have to be much, but just a little bit, just to keep it going and create some interest and curiosity there. But as long as the scrape is active and the deer are hitting it, I don't think you have to go out of your way to freshen them up. But if I have an easy opportunity to do so, I will.
Might as well. I got you. Got
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, this is like, when you're sitting in class and you don't understand anything, and then all of a sudden you get that one teacher that just lays it out there. But
Yeah.
no, that's cool, man. I think that, again, to reiterate it, it's really changed my perspective on mock scrapes, and I guess honestly the usage of them. Um, I'll be straightforward. I've never done mock scrapes this early in the year. I think that that's one thing that I probably lack in some knowledge, but moving forward, probably we'll be doing it. Um, most time it got to what some people call the October lull, and that's usually when I'd slide in there and knock those out, and just to kind of, for in my opinion, it was okay, get a new scent out, throw this out there, see what bucks show up, see who the dominant buck is, stuff like that. Obviously, I was a little um, misinformed on how to properly use mock scrapes. So,
Yeah.
thanks for the
It's
clarification.
at least in my experience in my area. I mean, if I could hand my phone to you right now, you'd be an instant believer. I promise you. If you just looked at pictures from this week, I mean,
Oh,
it's
I'm sure.
crazy. The increase in activity. It's like a light switch. Like they will visit scrapes all year round, but there's a difference in how they visit them. Um, Prior to this time of year. It's more of just a quick scent check, just a quick visit. But now that light switch is flipped. Now they're actually working it, and you can start to see aggressiveness. They'll come up, and you'll see them start posturing because there's another buck. They haven't shed their velvet yet, so they're not gonna start sparring or anything like that. But you start to see attitude changes, and the mock scrapes are a huge part of that communication for them. So it's one of my favorite things in the whitetail woods to watch transform this time of year. It's just cool to see the attitudes change with the timing of the year and the weather and all that type of stuff.
Right.
Absolutely. One of my friends got me into it about a couple years ago. He had actually the scent in his truck, and he was like, "Man, smell this new stuff I got, man. It smells so good." And about passed out, threw up one. But
Yeah.
he started showing me pictures, and I mean, bucks he wasn't getting on camera at the feed site that was 20 yards away. They were showing
Yeah.
up on that and hitting that very frequently, and I became a believer of it and firm believer.
It works, man, for sure. And of course, you don't have to put on, any scent. Like the deer, if you put a mock scrape up in the right location, the deer will take over. But in my experience, it takes a lot longer. You can really expedite that process if you add some, I don't want to call it foreign, but like, just not a known buck scent to it right away. It's like every deer that is in that area has to come investigate, and it really speeds up the activity on that scrape way faster than just letting the deer do it naturally.
Have you ever had a coyote hit one before? My buddy actually he had a video of one getting up and hitting it with his nose.
I don't think I've had a coyote. I had one spot last year where I had bobcats routinely come in, and they would come and piss on like the vegetation around the scrape. It was like their little litter box. I mean, it was just like every single one that came by. It was crazy. I've had raccoons, like especially with ropes. I've had raccoons like reach up and try to pull, but I don't think I've had a coyote. But the bobcat thing was kind of cool last year.
That was pretty crazy. He sent me that video, and I was like, "What you put on that thing, dude?
Yeah,
What you
exactly.
get on that rope?"
Talking about the doing the ropes though, the thing that got me going on a rope is one time I walked into one of my sets and I actually had a scrape hanging underneath my bowstring, hanging from
Oh
my.
yeah,
And when I seen that, and I was like, dude, that's wild. And then the next year, I kind of started using ropes, just like the vertical thing, like you was talking about, and they continuously started hitting them. I was like, that's just crazy. Like, I just never would have thought. I mean, it literally was my bowstring hanging off my stand, had a gigantic scrape underneath it.
yeah.
I was like, well, I'm gonna start using that. And ever since then, I've used them.
What's that
Yeah,
sink?
they work for sure. I've tried everything, like I said, and I've had good results. I just had a little bit better with the oak branch. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I think the rigidity of it helps. Like sometimes it just seems like they're almost like scratching their forehead with it, like with that they're not going to do with the rope. I think the rope probably holds scent a little bit better than a branch, just being more porous and stuff. But the preference to me has been pretty significant with the oak branch compared to like the ropes and something a little less firm.
Right. I think that we've kind of dipped into where the next question was going for me. You talk about, in the process of launching those products, what is, the next steps looking like? What's your camera setup looking like, bow setup, so on and so forth. I did see on Facebook you went to the Hoyt factory. That's pretty cool.
That was a lot of fun. It was the first time I'd seen the operation in person, and man, it gave me such a greater appreciation for just like what goes into them, the quality, the precision, like the amount of people that have their hands in on the manufacturing process is crazy, but also like the technology and the robotics and stuff like that they're involved in, just like making everything so precise, and like how it was so cool watching like how if certain things didn't fall within standards, like it just kept getting shaved off and shaved off. I mean, it was just like everything had to be such tight specs to even make it to the next stage in the production. So it was cool, just to see all that and kind of the history and evolution of Hoyt bows. But not a whole lot of changes for me equipment wise this year. A huge goal of mine last year was traditional. I used the recurve bow. Probably 80% of my hunts were with the recurve last year compared to the compound. And I expect it'll be somewhere in that ballpark this year. I still have yet to fling an arrow at a deer with my recurve. And so I will shoot a doe this year at least. I was just always in situations last year that I didn't want to shoot it though. I was targeting a buck or whatever. But I want to at least get my first deer with a recurve under my belt. But I plan to use it the majority of the season. The Hoyt Satori, it's just man, it's such a fun. If I have 15 minutes to shoot in my backyard, and my compound and my Satori are sitting there, I'm gonna grab the Satori every time. It's so much more fun to shoot. Um, just kind of feels like it feels like what bow hunting should be. Just that kind of primitive aspect to it. And it's like Nick. I know you're a baseball guy. It's like that's the best way I describe it to guys. It's like throwing a baseball. It's like you don't think about where you're aiming. You don't aim your arm or anything like that. You just you throw. That's how I feel about recurve and traditional archery. Like there's no aiming. It's instinct. You just know where you need to be, and there's something really cool about that. So plan to spend a lot of time with that. Camera wise, same setup. I haven't invested in a different camera. I've been so happy with my Sony A7S III. Just in terms of low light capability, which it seems like we're always up against, in the hunting woods. It's always early morning or late evening when the action happens. So that camera is hard to beat when it comes to low light performance.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. That thing's a beast.
yeah, and it shoots such good video. The 4K 120. I filmed almost all my hunts in that just because it's so cool to have that slow motion capability. It's fun watching and learning. That's the other thing about filming hunts is I learn a lot just from watching my footage. Different deer behavior type things. Especially calling. If I call at a deer or something and he acts like he didn't hear me, a lot of times I'll go review the footage and especially watching in slow mo, and you can see his ear did turn. He definitely heard me. He just wasn't interested or whatever it may be. So it's there's so many benefits. I could talk for hours about the benefits of filming hunts that the guys don't think about, but it is really cool looking at really quality footage like that. And that's another big plus for the A7S III.
Right. I think that this is their first full year with a 4K 120 capable camera. I've got the FX30, which is what I'm on right now. I love it so far. I think the most epic shot we've got with it so far was the turkey I killed last year. It was pretty insane. Um, but yeah, I agree. Like and I'll be honest, and kind of call myself out here. I don't go back and watch footage to see deer behavior because I'm always producing the shows for us. Not always, but whenever I'm producing shows for us, I'm not sitting there just analyzing it. But now that for me, it's like, huh, what have I missed by not just sitting down for 20 minutes after the hunt, going through and watching when this deer walked in? What did he do? Why did he walk off at this time? Was it just he was ready to leave? Did something bump him? So I think
Yeah,
that I think that I'm learning things that could make me a better hunter and understand deer better. Just from so far. I mean, this is I think that that's just I think that that's no. I mean, obviously the goal for the podcast was to sit down and talk with you, but man, like even as the people on the podcast, like I'm still learning. Like it's not like, oh yeah, I knew
yeah.
that, and just put on a front. I'll be black and white. I didn't. It's really cool.
Like we talked about in the beginning, that's the best part of this whole game. Continuing to learn and continuing to be challenged. That's I think the reason why a lot of us on this call continue to do it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's good to recognize that for sure.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, man, all in all, I can't express any more gratitude. We really appreciate you being on the podcast. This will be, like I said at the beginning, episode 2. Um, you know, Obviously, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to work with you, work under you, and it was a blessing. Like I said again earlier, learned a lot. It was always a good time. Whenever we had that whole gang together, I know you at that time you were a couple hours away or like an hour and a half, something like that. But man, nonetheless, I think that for me, it does kind of all originate at Midwest Whitetail, and I think that it's kind of crazy to see 7 years ago where I started versus now, and
Yeah.
obviously where then you were with Midwest Whitetail, now doing your own thing and absolutely killing it. Um, I think I still have the text on my phone whenever I text you. Whenever I found out you went on your own launch your own thing, and like I knew you was gonna kill it. It's the qualities there. The knowledge, and overall, you know, you care about putting out a good product for not only yourself but to everybody else. Whereas I'm not meaning this towards anybody in particular, but there's other shows and other content creators and people like that are putting out content just to make that paycheck. And
Yeah.
but nonetheless, man, like I said, I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast this evening. And maybe we look forward to catching up with you after deer season and seeing what happens with the recurve.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys having me, and excited to see how the podcast does. First of all, I know you guys are starting a new journey with this. So anything I can do to help there, I'm happy to come on anytime, and excited to follow along your guys' stories too, your storylines for this deer season. So feel free to reach out anytime. Same with anybody listening. Like I said earlier, I enjoy helping people, and my biggest thing with this is to keep it fun, and if I can have an impact on people, and allow others to keep it fun too, then I'm all in. So happy to help in any way I can, and I appreciate you guys' time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning in to Unfocused with DHB TV. Signing off for now. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the follow button, and we'll catch you next time.